You're listening to LA40 with Katerina Cozias, only on LA Talk Radio.
All right, good morning, Los Angeles. In fact, good morning to everyone, unless you're tuning in from Europe, in which case it's good evening to you. I'm your host, Katerina Cozias, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of LA40 here on LA Talk Radio this beautiful Thursday. It's a little past the hour, and we have a fabulous show coming up for you. Today, I'm joined in studio by our special guest, Dr. Jeffrey Young. Jeffrey, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here, Jeffrey, because you are a psychologist. You're also a cognitive behavioral therapy specialist, expert, I'd say. And in addition to that, you are a sleep specialist.
Correct.
Right. 60%, no, I'm backing that up, not 60%, but roughly, I did a little search, roughly 60 million Americans suffer from sleep issues. And since all of us sleep, since we spend a third of our lifetime in a state of sleep, this is an interesting topic.
Yes.
Yes, it is. I want to let our audience know at home, remind you that this is a dial-in show, and we would love to have you be part of the program. If you have questions for us at any time, you want to take advantage of Dr. Jeffrey being here in the house with us, so you can dial in to our conversations at 818-570-5085. I'm going to repeat that one more time because those of you on LA Talk Radio that are streaming through this platform have that number flashing on your screen. For those of you that are streaming in through Facebook, and if you're joining us from Facebook Live, we've recently linked those two platforms, so welcome. But you don't have that number flashing on your screen, so I'm going to repeat it here for you one more time. It's 818-570-5085. That'll get you into our ears, Dr. Jeffrey, and we can answer some questions. Again, before we start, big shout out to our sponsor. We're lucky to be here, Dr. Jeffrey, because of All Green Funding. Now, All Green gets you the green you need to get your business growing. So if you are in business for yourself, or if you're looking for additional capital, whether it's for personal or for pleasure, All Green Funding can help you out. And if you come in through our special Katerina promo link, they will be extra nice to you. So that link, for anyone interested in talking with All Green Funding, fabulous consulting financing firm out of San Diego. They are, no, I'm sorry, they're not out of San Diego. They're out of Orange County and Irvine, my bad. They can be reached at allgreenfunding.com/Katerina. All right, but we're going to get into this program. So, Dr. Jeffrey, how did you sleep tonight? Or last night?
I slept well last night.
Do you sleep well generally?
I do sleep well.
Okay. Have you ever had to perform a diagnosis on self? Or do you know the secret tips to sleeping well so you never have that issue?
Well, I don't know that I would ever say that I never have that issue.
Okay.
It's more a matter of how you handle the issue than it is whether you have the issue, because a couple of nights of bad sleep is not something that is problematic.
Okay.
Awakening in the middle of the night is not problematic. What's problematic is people's reactions to that and what they do in response to that creates the problems.
Okay.
And so that's one of the main themes. So I'm capable of not having a good night's sleep.
Okay.
If the circumstances are right, but it's rare, and I do have an idea of what to do if it happens.
Okay. Well, you're going to tell us what to do if it happens a little bit later in the program, because I know it happens to a lot of people. What I want to do is take us back a little bit, though, and for as silly and as simple as this sounds, I want you to explain what sleep is. I mean, we all sleep, but so do all the animals. You know, and some people have even commented that plants sleep. What happens during that 1/3 of portion of the day where we have to kind of go into that other state? Explain that a little bit.
Well, it's an important question because, and it's one of the things that I always start off when I give lectures.
Okay.
It's like, why do we sleep?
Why do we sleep?
Because it's not always it's not clear. It's becoming more clear. And what is sleep? And does every organism sleep? The answer is we don't know completely. We know that all terrestrial mammals sleep. Dogs, cats, lions, bears,
elephants, giraffes,
right?
Sure.
And there's a lot of we won't go into it now, but there's a lot of interesting information about how other animals sleep. And
do fish sleep? Do we know that?
Well, we know that there are periods of inactivity or relative inactivity. The interesting thing is dolphins, who are constantly moving, they sleep one hemisphere at a time.
What does that mean?
Well, the brain is split into two
wow.
hemispheres, right and left. So in order to continue to be moving and conscious, they put one hemisphere to sleep.
Wow.
And then they put the other hemisphere to sleep.
Well, and the thing with dolphins is they're technically mammals, right? So there's an element there.
They're marine mammals.
So why do we sleep as human beings?
We sleep because our brains need restoration and rest. And there's two main things that happen during sleep. In what we call deep sleep, there is lower brain and body temperature, which allows the brain to repair and to rest. There's greater antioxidant activity that goes on that assists in that repair. And then you have REM sleep, which most people are familiar with, rapid eye movement.
Okay, now talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. Rapid eye movement sleep is the other kind of sleep that you're in, and it happens every 90 minutes roughly. You go into a REM cycle. And that sleep, if you would look at people on monitors and you monitor them, they look like they're awake.
I've seen some friends of mine on a couch that are sleeping, but the eyes are moving around, and you're wondering, what did they smoke? No, I'm just joking. But no, I've seen it with people that seem like they're asleep, but their eyes are moving. So a little bit trippy, right?
And in terms of function there, what's happening there is what we think is mood regulation. That is the neurotransmitter systems like that produce serotonin, for example, because people are, I think, somewhat familiar with serotonin because most of the medications for depression work on serotonin.
So serotonin basically is the happy hormone, right?
Energy
hormone.
Right. It gives it in balance. And in the right quantities, it's presumed to help with depression, anxiety.
Okay.
So those receptor systems they take a break.
Right.
In REM sleep, and the idea is that what happens later on is that you're able to then have more sensitivity to serotonin, and
by sleeping better?
By getting good REM sleep.
Okay, interesting. Now, you touched on something a little bit earlier, but I want to come back to it. People go to bed, and we hear this whole notion of you should get 8 hours of sleep.
Right.
And yet, half of my friends that I talk to will tell me I woke up at 3 in the morning and I couldn't get back to bed. And I have this recurring problem where I wake up in the middle of the night, my brain starts moving, I start stressing, I start getting anxious, and I can't go back to bed. So there's two questions in this right now. Number one, is there a perfect amount of sleep that people should be getting per night? Question one.
No. There's no perfect amount of sleep that people should be getting. On average, 7 to 8 hours. Okay. But that changes over the lifespan. Well, because you can have adolescents should be getting somewhere between 8.5 and 9.5 hours.
Is that just because they're growing? Their body needs more time to move through that transitional phase?
Right. There's secretion of growth hormone actually during sleep. And as you go through from infancy into young adulthood, sleep need changes and it goes down.
Okay.
And then by the time you're in adulthood, you're looking at those averages of which turn out to be about 8 hours.
Okay.
But there are people who are naturally long sleepers, not a pathological category. This is not something that you have to worry about. Like if you say, I need 9 hours of sleep, and if you're able to get 9 hours of sleep, great.
Bonus, right.
Right.
Yeah.
If somebody says, I need 7 hours of sleep, and you're able to get 7 hours of sleep, and you feel good, great.
Now, how about this question, just to interject, and we'll go back to the original question. There's so many questions, but you have different cultures. For example, my family is from Greece. And when I go to Europe, especially Southern Europe, and we're in Spain and Italy and France and Greece, and people nap in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So I see it with my friends that, I don't nap because born and raised in North America, we're not used to napping in the middle of the day. But in some cultures they are. And what I find is they'll sleep for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, and then they'll only sleep for about 5 hours at night. So is that, like we were saying, let's say, just to make the numbers easy, an 8 hours is pretty healthy. Can that be split like that, or does it have to be 8 consecutive hours?
It does not need to be 8 consecutive hours of sleep, at least in my opinion. There are other people that might disagree. Okay. First of all, holding to 8 consecutive hours of sleep is problematic in that it sets up unrealistic and unhealthy expectations about sleep. So people come in thinking, I need 8 hours of consecutive sleep. That's not necessarily true.
Okay.
The thing about napping is, I think as human beings and probably as mammals and primates, that taking a nap in the afternoon is part of our natural physiology. And there are cultures that respect that. And
well, I was going to say the Japanese actually promote it, especially in their corporate culture, which is so anti-American corporate culture to nap in the middle of the afternoon. And yet there are some companies, and Arianna Huffington is one person, the original founder of the Huffington Post, and now the founder of Thrive Global. And her big kick right now, and I guess I don't want to call it a kick, but her theme right now is that sleep is important. And we're undervaluing it by this notion, especially that we have in America of, hey, I'm burning the candle at both ends. People pride themselves on not getting sleep. Oh, I only got 4 hours because I'm working 90 hours a week. There's got to be something a little unbalanced about that.
Well, it's just denying one's physiological needs. It's like saying, well, you don't need, to take in a certain amount of calories a day in order to be nourished. And sleep is nourishment, effectively. And so if you think you're getting away with less sleep and therefore being more productive, it's probably a false economy. It's probably something that isn't really working well for you.
Now, what about, voluntarily having a less amount of sleep versus insomnia? Because we've all heard of the word insomnia, but people misuse it. What is insomnia exactly, and how do I know if I have it?
Well, insomnia is different from sleep deprivation.
Okay, and what are the differences?
Okay, so sleep deprivation is willful, generally speaking, where somebody is burning the candle at both ends.
Or watching, 7 episodes of Game of Thrones before they go to bed, right? 3 in the morning.
Exactly.
That's willful sleep deprivation.
That's willful sleep deprivation.
All right.
And so one of the things that you need to differentiate is this insomnia or is this sleep deprivation? And that's one of the first things that I will do. And insomnia is basically a disorder where you are having trouble getting to sleep, staying asleep, or you're waking too early in the morning. And you have an intent and a sleep window that you're trying to fulfill, and you cannot fill that sleep window with sleep. So somebody may take, let's say, 9 hours.
Okay.
As a sleep window, and that way they know they're going to get their 8 hours. So some of it's buffer zone. I'm going to get into bed and I'll watch a little TV, and that 9 hours might be met with only 5 hours of sleep. That would be insomnia.
Gotcha. So how do we treat insomnia?
Well, the primary treatment or at least the most common treatment, is through medications, through, hypnotic medications. They're called hypnotics. or sedative hypnotics.
Now, how about melatonin, which I hear is supposed to be the holistic version? Is melatonin effective versus an actual sleeping pill?
Well, melatonin is interesting because it really isn't a sleeping pill. And part of the problem with melatonin is that people take it at the wrong time.
Okay.
People take
What's the right time?
Well, generally 4 to 5 hours before your habitual sleep time.
That you should be taking the melatonin
That you should
4
be
to 5
taking,
hours before?
Right.
Not 20 minutes before?
Right. Because what melatonin does, it begins to secrete at night in response to darkness. And that is our cue for sleep, and the circadian system has an alerting system, and that alerting system goes down at night. The thing that keeps us alert during the day starts to dampen down, and melatonin is the thing that dampens that down. But if you do it too close to bedtime, you're altering your circadian rhythm in a way that isn't helpful.
Wow, so you're almost negating what you're trying to achieve.
People can, right. And also I would say, be careful with melatonin, because it can affect reproductive endocrinology. So if you're trying to get pregnant, it can be problematic.
Wow, that's the first time I've heard that. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So just because something is natural doesn't necessarily mean benign.
Wow, very interesting. How about this? And I don't know if this is a myth or not, but I've heard that cherries naturally contain melatonin. So if you're having trouble sleeping, I've been told eat some cherries before bed. Is that just like an old wives' tale?
I have no idea.
Okay. So as a sleep specialist, and since you don't know about the cherries,
a gap in my
there you go.
A gap in my knowledge.
We'll assume that that's an old wives' tale.
Well, it may be that I just don't know.
Now, one of the things you may
Which is
you
not
may
a
not
surprise.
know. Let's Google that later, you and I, after the
Okay.
program. If anyone is near a computer right now, Google cherries and sleep and let us know. Call in and let us know what you find. How about, forgetting cherries and sleep for a moment, how about sleep and sex? How does sleep or a lack thereof affect your sex life?
Well, it would affect your sex life in any in the same way that it would affect, I think, any other part of your life. That if you're fatigued, if your mood is low, that it's not going to be conducive to sexual activity. It's not going to be something
because you're so damn tired.
You're tired, and it doesn't have. I mean, I'll put it to you this way: it doesn't have to affect your sex life. It's not a necessary connection. In fact, lack of sleep doesn't have to affect anything in particular as a necessary connection. It does, and undeniably, cause problems. But again, if somebody is avoiding sexual relations or avoiding it because of a lack of sleep, I think that's problematic in and of itself. So it goes to the idea that one of the things that people do when they're not sleeping is reduce activity as a way of conserving energy, but that doesn't work. So maybe they stop exercising, or they cancel plans, or they try to say, well, I'm going to at least conserve energy and rest. There's no substitute for sleep. Rest does not confer the benefits of sleep, so resting more is not going to be helpful.
Now, something that is helpful or isn't helpful is dreaming in a dream state. So how do dreams affect the efficacy of your sleep? Because I've heard of people that say, I remember every single dream, every single night, and I talk to other people that say to me, I don't remember anything, I don't think I dream. Do we all dream? And if so, why do some of us remember those dreams and others don't?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a great answer, or that there is a great answer for why people remember dreams or not. The presumption is that everybody does dream, and most of the dreams that we have, we don't remember. We do remember the ones that are fairly close to awakening, and usually the ones that are in the morning. where sleep.
Is that because we're coming out of sleep, out of that deep sleep state? So it's a little closer to the surface in terms of our consciousness?
Yeah, the dreaming sleep is a little bit longer toward the morning. So there's a sort of a piling up of dreams possible in the morning. And it may be related to the fact that there's a certain lightening of sleep because you've already
your 6 or 7 hours, right?
And that the last dream that you have may be the one that you remember. So there is a presumption that everybody dreams, but dreams can be problematic for some people, especially if they're having chronic negative dreams or what we would call nightmares. That can be problematic for people. But just remembering dreams or not remembering dreams in and of themselves is not a problem.
Something that is a problem, and I've been hearing this from a few of my parent friends. We have a lot of parents on the program, and something that came up a few different times over the last few months from different sets of parents was this conversation about their kids having night terrors. So the kids in question tend to be between the ages of 3 and 7, and they're just screaming in the middle of the night, yelling, but they're sort of in a hypnotic state because in the morning the kid doesn't seem to remember having had that night terror. So what's the difference between a nightmare and a night terror, or are they one and the same?
All right. Well, nightmares and night terrors are very different phenomena. So a nightmare, if a child wakes up from a nightmare, the child is fully awake, usually is yelling for mom and dad to come in and console them, and mom and dad can come in and console, and it's an unpleasant experience, but it's not as bad as a night terror. And a night terror is something that a child awakens from, and there's this incredibly disturbing stare that the child has, just like looking forward, as if, taken over, and the parents are often very scared because the child is not able to be talked to and consoled.
Wow.
And it just simply runs its course, and the child goes back to sleep. Child will often have no memory of it. The parents, unfortunately, will have terrible
Poor parents are traumatized, right?
The parents are traumatized. And so we oftentimes hear people talking about night terrors when they're really talking about nightmares.
Okay. Now, how about if it is a true night terror episode, what do you do for the child, or do you just let it run its course and hope that he'll eventually grow out of it?
Well, there is a
sense. Or can you treat it?
Well, there are things called scheduled awakenings. And
sounds like a title of a book.
Scheduled awakening. It might be a good title of a book. So what it does is that if you have a sense of when that night terror comes about, you can wake the child briefly, maybe about 15 minutes before that night terror is expected, if there is a pattern, and that can often disrupt it.
That can often disrupt your sleep, though, as well. So then you move into a state of lack of sleep. But I hear you. We're focusing on the child, people. Come on.
Right. It's your babies. That's what you do. you make these sacrifices. But what you're trading is you're going to be up anyhow, right? If the night terror happens.
Right.
So you might as well be up, and give the child a little nudge and arouse the child out of sleep.
So here we are out of sleep. You hear people saying, if I don't eat, I get cranky, I get anxious, I get irritable. And you hear that same thing for people that don't sleep, right? So going back to things that we can do, what are some common day myths about sleep? So we talked about this fact of you have to have 8 hours. It's like someone saying you have to have 8 glasses of water a day. The part of me thinks that people are different, individuals are different. There has to be a different physiological response, because some people have different energy cycles, right? They're morning people, they wake up at 5 a.m., they're raring to go, and other people, you can't get them going before noon, but hey, at 8 p.m. strikes and they're off to the races.
Right.
So with sleep, I suppose to a degree, some people are lighter sleepers than others, or require more or less time.
Well, there are individual differences in sleep, and there are individual differences in how people react to a lack of sleep.
Okay.
Commonly in insomnia, what you're finding is people who are fatigued, and as opposed to being sleepy during the day. And this is an important distinction to make between fatigue and sleepiness. And it's important diagnostically as well, because it also goes to whether or not there's another sleep disorder. So one sleep disorder that results in daytime sleepiness often is sleep apnea. And for people who don't know what that is, it's basically a sleep-related breathing disorder where it can be anything, well, along that continuum, it can be anything from respiratory-related effort, that there's more effort that you have to put into breathing at night, to all the way where the throat closes completely.
Oh, wow.
And you're not breathing at all. And what happens to you is that you have to wake up to take a big breath to restore your oxygen.
And that disrupts your sleep, which
So
over time adds up to less sleep, which makes you yawn at 10 in the morning the next day.
But people with insomnia tend to be what we call wired but tired. They're like, I wish I could take a nap. I'd love to take a nap, but I'm feeling so amped up that I can't do a nap, even though I feel sleep deprived at the same time. And so fatigue is one of those things where people say, I need to take a break. I can't look at this thing anymore. I can't work on this memo anymore. I can't do this. I need to sit down. And sleepiness is roughly the same thing. But the thing that differentiates it is that the person who is truly sleepy will sit on the couch and fall asleep. And the person that is fatigued will sit on the couch and maybe get some restoration, but also
stress about their lack of
and not fall asleep effectively.
So say you are one of those fatigued people, and you have this thing where, again, 4 a.m, or you're just up all night. You really are. What do we do to combat that? I want you to go into cognitive behavioral therapy for me, and how that might help people.
Okay, so one of the things that we do is, first of all, a very good assessment of the sleep problem. And we go through all the mental health, medical health issues that could be contributing, medications that could be contributing, what caused the insomnia, if somebody remembers a particular cause. And we put that together, and then that directs the treatment plan. And so the treatments that are available, the non-pharmacological, non-medication treatments that are available, are things like sleep efficiency training.
What the heck is that?
Sleep efficiency training is basically limiting somebody to the number of hours that they report, limiting their sleep window to the amount of hours they report sleeping. So if somebody, again, using easy numbers, says, well, I give myself 8 hours, but I sleep 4. Well, that's 50% sleep efficiency. Of the time they're giving themselves, only 50% is spent sleeping. So they say that, okay, you sleep 4 hours. So what I would ask them to do is keep their wake time the same, but delay the bedtime. In this case, not until they reach 4 hours window, which is too much, but it's usually 5 to 5.5 hours is the minimum. So somebody who may say, I go to bed at 10 and I wake up at 6 and I get 4 hours of sleep, well, now they have a 2 o'clock in the morning bedtime.
Wow.
Or 1 o'clock in the morning bedtime.
Sure.
And what this does is that it will produce thicker, more consolidated, and better, more using sort of the nutrition metaphor, more nutritious sleep. Why? Because
in that window, they're actually getting an allotted amount of time.
In other words, the theory behind it is, okay, you're only getting, let's say, 5 hours of sleep. We're going to instead of giving you this big window where you're going to end up having trouble getting to sleep, having awakenings,
stressing about that,
right?
And that keeps
your
you
sleep is thin. Let's say we're going to limit it to a shorter period of time.
Okay.
And so when you get into bed, you're going to be really, really sleepy. And what will happen, hopefully, is you will get to sleep quickly. You will stay asleep. You will get into, hopefully, deeper stages of sleep and stay there longer. And you will wake more refreshed. And then what happens as their sleep efficiency improves, like 85, 90%, then we start
that.
Then we extend it. So now you have a 12:30 bedtime. Now you have a midnight bedtime. Now we have 11:30.
Okay.
And we stop when the sleep efficiency starts to break up.
Oh.
And
you go back to the old, the lesser time and start all over again?
No, we would go back one notch.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
And keep somebody there for some time. And then we would also monitor the daytime effects as well.
Wow.
And the other thing that we can do is something called stimulus control, which is basically taking sleeplessness out of the bedroom. And why do we want to do that?
Okay. Why do we want to do that? Yes.
Yeah, why do we want to do that? We want to do that because all the time that you spend asleep, or rather in the bedroom not asleep, is time that is conditioning the bed and bedroom to be a stimulus for wakefulness. We want the bed and bedroom to be a stimulus for two things: sexual activity and sleep.
Great. I think we have a caller here, Dr. Jeffrey. Hello, you're talking to LA Talk Radio.
Yes, hello. This is Lois from Miami Beach.
Hi, Lois. Thank you for joining us.
I'm curious why sleep is good for weight loss. I've often heard the longer you sleep, the more weight you lose. Is there any truth to that?
The longer you sleep, the more weight you lose. I don't think that there's much truth to that in terms of the longer you sleep. I think that there's some evidence that short sleep and insomnia leads to metabolic syndromes, which make it, in terms of insulin levels and things like that.
Or simply snacking because you're awake.
Well, you could be awake and snacking, right? Because some people will, at a time when they wake up in the middle of the night, they may go down and have something to eat. But in other words, on that idea, getting more and more sleep is not going to be helpful, I believe, for weight loss. But getting too little sleep is correlated with some of these metabolic problems that make it harder to lose weight, and they disrupt two hormones like leptin and ghrelin that control how satiated you are from food. So when those get dysregulated, then you have problems. But that's generally from less sleep.
And it's, that was a good question, Lois, because you got me excited for a moment there. I'm thinking we're heading into summertime, which means for ladies, it's bikini season. And I was hoping his answer was going to be, yes, it does, so that we could have another excuse to be lazy. The more you sleep, the cuter your body. But it doesn't seem like that's the case.
I would say getting adequate sleep for you is the best thing. And which brings me to, what is adequate sleep? Because that's important. Adequate sleep is sleep that you get that allows you to feel energetic and productive during the day.
And again, that can vary between different people.
Right. There are some people, and oversleeping is not a good thing either.
Perfect. Lois, are you still with us? I think she just let us go. Okay. I was going to ask her if she had any more questions, but thanks for being with us, Lois. Appreciate it. All right. And that was a great question on her part.
Yeah.
Yeah. It it all kind of ties in. I suppose it comes down to a healthy lifestyle. And one thing that is shifting, one thing that has shifted for everybody in terms of a lifestyle is this little tiny thing we call an iPhone or a smartphone, depending on if you're an Android user or not.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about screen time before bed. Good, bad? What is that, a myth? Is it okay if I sit in that little screen, and does it affect my sleep?
It is an open question. Is probably the best answer I can give you. There's some research to suggest that the light from the screen can disrupt melatonin production.
Okay.
And light suppresses melatonin. So right now, in daylight, we're not producing any melatonin. At night, it begins to secrete. And so by having the light in your face like that, and some people can dampen it. But it, depends. When people come to me and say, I like reading before bed, and it's not one of the rules, because if you look at the rules of sleep, and I will have to say that can drive people crazy. I've had people come in with, I've followed everything, every rule, and nothing, and every time I follow another rule, it gets worse. The screen time issue is, I think, up for grabs. If you feel relaxed by it, if you like to check certain things, the thing I would say as a general rule is don't go looking at any emails or work-related things that are going to create a some sort of striving, or I need to do this or I need to do that. Don't look at articles that are going to be agitating to you. But if it's like listening to a nice podcast or checking in on a couple of things, I think that's okay.
I know with me, I mean, I do, like most people, I tend to look at my phone right before I go to bed, right, just in case there's anything there. I agree with you. I try to avoid email simply because if somebody feels the need to email me at 11 p.m. with a problem, I don't want to take that problem to bed with me. But I will check things like Facebook quickly or my text messages. And I actually am a great sleeper, so I will put the phone down and then I will just go to bed for 8 hours.
But
so
that's important to amplify.
Right.
So people who sleep well can do just about anything, and the rules just don't apply. Now, they may apply at some point if sleep begins to get disturbed, and then you have to start paying attention. But that's the important thing about getting a good assessment of your sleep and what you're doing, because for some people, they want to continue that reading, they want to continue, and they've heard that it's wrong or it's bad, and we try it out and we say, all right, let's keep it for now, and let's see how it goes. And if it doesn't go well, we find that you do better without it. Then what we can do, for example, is create a buffer zone. That's important.
Explain that.
Buffer zone is something where you are allowing a certain amount of time before you go to sleep to kind of detach from everything. You may take in that buffer zone time, let's say it might be a half hour, and write some things down that you think you want to accomplish, or things that may be concerning that you want to deal with. But you add structure to it, and you protect the sleep time and say, look, I've written these things down, and now I know that in the morning when I wake up, they'll be there. I don't have to put thought into them now.
And this is my time to eject and relax.
Exactly.
Right.
And that can be helpful for people to do.
Sure. One thing that people do that I've seen, and I want to touch on, is the last question here because it pertains to our audience. Does your sleep change as you age? Should it change?
Sleep changes over the lifespan, absolutely. And as you get older...
Because older people seem to need less sleep.
Well, older people don't necessarily need less sleep. There is a bit of a change in, that we see people in the older ranges needing, maybe they had 8 hours and now they're about down to 7. What also happens as you get older is your circadian rhythm shifts, and you begin to go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. as opposed to adolescents who are more naturally inclined to go to bed later and wake up later. So all those things need to be accounted for with older adults. Sleep does not have to be poor as an older adult, even though there are changes. Sleep tends to lighten. There may be more things that will wake you up or disturb you. There are
Because I know for women they go through menopause, and I
Right.
know that sleep is absolutely disrupted during that time with a hot flash, or then they get cold, or then they're just nervous.
Right. And one of the things to bear in mind there with anything that disturbs your sleep is how you handle it. And obviously there are medical treatments that could be used, hormone replacement therapies that can help mitigate some of that. But a lot of people don't want to do that because of other risks involved. And so it becomes a matter of managing being awake in the middle of the night. And one of the things that I really want to talk about is there's no terrible thing about being awake in the middle of the night. The more that you I can't say that word.
Catastrophize, perhaps.
Right.
Right, I know what you're saying.
The
more we make it a catastrophe.
Right, I say that word every day, but I can't say it now. The more that you create a catastrophe around it, the more it is alerting, the more it becomes problematic,
right.
the more that you pay attention to your sleep, which leads me to one other thing that I do want to mention is sleep effort.
Okay, talk to me about sleep.
Sleep effort is anything that you do to try to get yourself to sleep. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be hard to hear, but I'm going to tell you the truth. There is nothing at all other than sedating yourself with chemicals. Nothing you can do to put yourself to sleep.
Wow.
Now, that sounds like bad news, right?
It does, because what if you need to go to bed?
But it's good news. And the good news about it is that it means you give up the struggle to get to sleep. You simply allow it to be. You cannot chase sleep around the bedroom. You can't find it. It will always elude you, but it will always find you.
But that's actually a very liberating thought, because that takes the onus off of you to have to put yourself to sleep.
Right. And that's the problem that I find with people who are doing a lot of things like, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. All of those things are fine to do, but only do them because you like doing them and because it's good in the moment. Do not do them with the idea that now that I've done it, I will get to sleep, because you will lay there thinking now the stakes are even higher.
So number one tip as we close up the hour here for people that may want to put themselves to sleep, we just said don't effort. What can they do? How do you do it? What do you do?
To get to sleep?
Yes.
Well, some of it's what we've talked about before here with, not making an awakening a problem. Some of it can be through relaxation if you are really amped up. But a lot of it is going to be allowing the natural process to unfold and not get in its way with trying
Your own
harder.
mental stress, right?
Do not try. This is not something you can get better at by trying harder.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This was a great amount of information. Dr. Jeffrey, if people in the local LA area want to work with you, how do they find you?
You can go to my website, which is drjeffreyyoung.com, and there's a lot of information there on my general practice, which is outside of sleep, and a lot of things that are on insomnia and sleep disorders.
Fantastic. You're also over at UCLA?
Yes, I'm assistant clinical professor, and I teach sleep class in the medical school and another class there for second-year medical students.
Perfect. Well, for anyone that wants to be a student of sleep, please have a look at Dr. Jeffrey's website. Reach out to him if you or any family or friends are suffering from sleep issues, and know that with a professional in your corner, things can look up. I thank you so much for being here, for taking
Thank
the
you for
time to be
having
with
me.
us, Dr. Jeffrey. Thank you as well for tuning into LA40. It's always a pleasure to be here. Don't forget to please follow us across all of our social media platforms. For me, it's easy. It's at Katerina Cozias. I make it easy across everything. My favorite is Instagram, so if we're not Instagram friends, please do hit me up on that platform. And also, of course, LA Talk Radio, because we have been here for 10 years now. And it's always good to have you follow us because there's so many great programs on this network. For now, we're going to leave you. Again, Dr. Jeffrey here, sleep specialist. Katerina Cozias, your host. And we will see you again next week. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye now.
You're listening to LA40 with Katerina Cozias, only on LA Talk Radio.